Today's story is Jupiter, our solar system. Looking at Jupiter from Earth. Have you ever eaten a scoop of rainbow sherbet with a cherry on top? The planet Jupiter looks a little like that. It looks like a round ball of many colors with a large red dot. But if your scoop of sherbet was as big as Jupiter, it will be almost 90,000 miles wide. Jupiter is the largest planet in the solar system. It was named after the Roman god who ruled over all the other gods. People have been looking at Jupiter for thousands of years. It is bright like a star. It can be seen without a telescope. In 1610, the Italian astronomer named Galileo Galilei used a telescope to get a closer look at Jupiter. He found 4 moons around the planet. He named them Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. In July 1994, a piece of ice and rock called a comet crashed into Jupiter. It was named Shoemaker-Levy 9. This was the first time scientists saw 2 objects in space hit each other. Many people on Earth used their telescopes to watch. The Hubble Space Telescope, a large telescope in space, took pictures of the crash. This event told us a lot about the giant planet. All planets spin or rotate. Round rotation is the planet's day. On Earth, our day is about 24 hours long. Jupiter has a very short day. However, it takes Jupiter less than 10 hours to spin around once. While Jupiter rotates, it also revolves. Revolve means to travel around the sun. Planets revolve along a path called an orbit. One trip around the sun is the planet's year. It takes Jupiter a long time to orbit the sun. 1 year on Jupiter is almost as long as 12 Earth years. You can never visit Jupiter or stand in its surface. Jupiter is made mostly of gases just like Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. These planets are called gas giants. Jupiter does not have any solid ground like Earth does. Most of Jupiter is made of hydrogen gas. Scientists believe that deep inside Jupiter may be a core of liquid or slushy rock or metal. The core might even be as hot as 36,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Layers of liquid hydrogen surround the core. Then comes Jupiter's atmosphere. A planet's atmosphere is made of the gas and clouds around the planet. The clouds is its atmosphere are one of the first things people notice about Jupiter. The clouds have colorful stripes called zones and belts. The zones are light in color. The belts are dark. The clouds have in different colors because of their temperature and what they are made of. They also have different colors because of their altitude. Red clouds are the highest. Brown and white clouds made up the main layer. Blue clouds are the lowest in the atmosphere. All the clouds move around Jupiter from east to west. High winds make them travel at speeds up to 400 miles per hour. The clouds create stormy weather on Jupiter. They are filled with lightning and powerful storms. The cloud patterns change all the time. Some change in just a few hours. Others change over many years. One of the largest storms on Jupiter has been raging them for more than 300 years. This swirling storm is called the Great Red Spot. It is shaped like an oval. It is about 15,400 miles wide and 8,700 miles high. That's as big as 2 Earths side by side. Most people know that Saturn has rings. They are icy and bright. In 1979, astronomers found that Jupiter has rings too. Jupiter's rings are dark. Jupiter has 4 rings around its middle. There are 2 faint outer rings, a flat main ring and the inner cloudy ring. The rings are made mostly of tiny rocks and dust. This rock and dust was created when meteorites crashed into Jupiter's moons. At least 16 moons orbit around Jupiter. The planet has 4 large moons named Ganymede, Callisto, Europa, and Io. They are called the Galilean moons after Galileo. Astronomers study their moons very carefully. Ganymede is the largest moon in the solar system. It is covered with dark craters and light rages. Callisto is covered with craters too. It has an icy rocky surface. Europa also have a layer of ice on its surface. Scientists think an ocean of liquid water or slushy ice may lie below Europa's surface. Io is much different than Europa. Io is bubbling and hot. It has the most active volcanoes in the solar system. The volcanoes shoot lava at more than 190 miles above the planet's surface. 4 smaller moons orbit close to Jupiter. They come the 4 Galilean moons. Finally, there are at least 8 outer moons. 4 of these outer moons orbit the direction opposite from the others. An object that scientists think may be another moon also circles Jupiter. They call it S1999J1. But its orbit is very far from Jupiter. Scientists will watch it closely. Then they will decide if it can be called a moon. Jupiter is one of the outer planets. The outer planets lie beyond a belt of asteroids that also orbit the Sun. The other outer planets are Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. It is hard to study Jupiter and the other outer planets by using telescopes because these planets are so far away from Earth. Many spacecraft have been sent to Jupiter to study them more closely. 2 very successful missions were sent to Jupiter in 1973 and 1974. The spacecraft was called Pioneer 10 and Pioneer 11. They sent back a lot of new information about Jupiter. After leaving Jupiter, Pioneer 10 heading out of the solar system. Pioneer 11 went to study other outer planets. In 1979, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 flew by Jupiter. They discovered Jupiter's rings and some of the moons. Together, the 2 spacecraft took more than 33,000 pictures of Jupiter and its moons. They also saw storms and lightning in the clouds. They saw volcanoes shooting lava on Io as the spacecraft passed. Many spacecraft had flown by Jupiter, but one spacecraft named Galileo went into orbit around Jupiter. It could gather more information on orbit than just flying by. In 1989, Galileo was released in space by the space shuttle Atlantis. It was the first spacecraft to orbit one of the outer planets. It was into orbit in 1995. It has been studying Jupiter ever since. Galileo was made into 2 parts, an orbiter and a probe. The orbiter circled the planet. It is still collecting information about Jupiter today. The probe dropped into the clouds of Jupiter's atmosphere in December 1995. It fell from almost an hour and sent back information about winds, temperatures, and clouds. The next spacecraft to go to Jupiter will be the Europa Orbiter mission. It will be launched in 2008. It will look closely at Jupiter's moon, Europa, to see an ocean of water lies beneath its frozen crust. Astronomers still have many questions about Jupiter. They are very curious about the atmosphere. They want to know what the winds are so strong, and they want to know why the Great Red Spot has lasted so long. Today, scientists are very interested in Europa. It might be the only other place in the solar system with a large amount of water, like Earth. Where there is water, there may be life too. Scientists hope that Europa Orbiter will tell us if there is water on this Jupiter moon. The end.